And welcome to the castle, everybody. This is Night Saber Z42, and today will be the first recording of the Petals Argent, which is a solo adventure for obviously one person. And I've already created my character for this one. His name is Monterey. He's a halfling barbarian, and I've actually recorded my creation of him in a tutorial style video, which you can check out. Although, a couple of things beforehand, this video is actually going to be much different than any of the content I've put out before. And what I mean by that is this is going to be in a very podcast style. So if that's not your thing, feel free to go ahead and skip this, but I implore you to give it a try and to even give me some feedback and some advice. So the Petals Argent is a solo adventure. You can find it on Drive-Thru RPG for about $12.99, although I'm sure you could find it at a discount later in the year or and stuff like that. So without further ado, let us begin our adventure. Again, you throw your weight on the hauling line. Again, the bundle lurches after you, churning up dust in your wake. Having reached the top of the rise, you pause in the late day heat to wipe grit from your brow. The valley spreads out below you, the high road wending through it, stretching toward Waterdeep on the coast. You look back at the sight of your comically teetering companions. Habrad and Glutch were both with you when the coach from Daggerford broke down. You suggested the two elderly gnomes wait for the driver for the next coach, but they assured you their innovative telescoping boots would lengthen their strides to match your own.
Cobble hops,
Habrad called their magical footwear when he strapped on his pair.
just what a gnome needs to see over the crowds this year.
To demonstrate, he sprung up as high as a troll on stilts, then immediately lost his balance, staggering across the roadway in long, careening strides. Only the gnome's equally improbable telescoping walking cane saved Habrad from a dangerous fall. Habrad and Glutch are priests of Gond. They are understandably fascinated by such inventions. They are heading to Waterdeep for the annual Day of Wonders celebration. People will come for miles to watch tomorrow's grand parade of the temple's many amazing automatons and other colorful creations. For Gond's priests, the celebration is a chance to meet and trade tales of their work in the outlying villages. More important to Habrad and Glutch, it is also a time to turn in their official invention diaries at the House of Inspired Hands, showcasing creations like this magic footwear, and exchange those diaries for new, blank journals. Despite the gnomes' excitement for the cobble hops, you quickly discovered that their long, springy strides are ill-suited to pulling heavy loads. To stop the gnomes' complaints about you outpacing them, you soon find yourself dragging their luggage through the sweltering heat. Now, with Waterdeep finally in sight, your relief is palpable. You'll arrive by nightfall, just a few hours late. You look forward to riding yourself to this luggage and the two gnomes who trail you like swaying drunken storks.
Where would we be without your cobble hops?
Glutch muses from beneath the shady brim of his priest's hat.
They're going to be magic during the parade.
The taller gnome stops to take his portly friend's hand.
No one's going to block your view this year,
He says earnestly.
I promise. Your greatest invention is friendship.
Habrad replies warmly, squeezing Glutch's skinny fingers. The uncomfortably touching moment between the elderly gnomes cools your annoyance with them. You think it must be a comfort to have a true friend with you on the road. Your thoughts turn to your own friends, who you left behind in Waterdeep when you struck out to find adventure. Unbidden, your hand settles on the letters in your pocket, the invitation you got a 10-day ago. Rufio wants to meet and catch up on old times. You've been hesitant to go back, too proud to admit that your adventuring career hasn't been as successful as you'd hoped, but the direct invitation is one you can't ignore. Today, you'll see your friends again. Well, perhaps today is the wrong word, you think wryly. Maybe you'll get there by tonight. Again, you throw your weight against the hauling line, continuing towards the city. The sun is dipping low in the west, touching the trackless sea by the time you reach Waterdeep. You bypass the southern gate in hopes of finding a thinner crowd at the eastern entry, but the wait is still a long one. A large bonfire burns on either side of the road as travelers queue to enter the city. Most of these people have come for tomorrow's parade. They'll cram into lodgings tonight, anywhere they can find them. Some even have small tents intending to camp along the Way of the Dragon to reserve prime parade watching spots. A few of the visitors have already begun their celebrations, singing, drinking, and talking loudly as they move into the city. As you pass under the arch of the river gate, a cool coastal breeze blows over you, welcoming you back to Waterdeep. You hand Glutch the hauling line for his luggage and say your terse farewells. The gnomes are thankful for your help, but eager to get out up to the House of Inspired Hands in the Sea Ward. They drag their bundle westward, disappearing into the crowd. With River Street still packed full of carts and pedestrians, you decide to skip the crowds and cut north through the back alleys of the Trades Ward, your gang's old stomping grounds. In a matter of minutes, you're stepping into a broad alley at the center of the Slipstone Street. You find the gang's rickety old wagon parked next to a familiar, narrow stairway up to the second floor apartments. In the light of nearby street lamps, you see that the lower floor of the building, once a warehouse, is now a busy bakery. That's not the only change here. Many shops have new names or sell different wares, and everything seems a bit shabbier than you remember it. The economy hasn't been good to the residents of this quiet neighborhood. After a long, nostalgic moment, you mount the stairs and knock on the door at the top. You don't have to wait long. The bolt scraps loudly, then the stout door, heavier than usual in this part of town, swings back to reveal a dark-haired man with 2 days of stubble peppering his jawline. You don't recognize the man until he smiles. Latchboy is grown now, and only a shadow of the skinny teenager remains inside the large man you see before you. Without preamble, Latchboy embraces you. "Ha! Welcome back," he says simply, then bows you into the Slipstone Gang's hideout. You enter the planning room, a long, narrow space dominated by a heavy wooden table used for eating, planning, and meetings of various sorts. The room is full of the smells of baking bread. Even at this hour, the bakery below the hideout is preparing to serve an unusually large crowd tomorrow morning. The planning room seems smaller than you remember it, but instead of feeling cramped, it feels cozy and warm. The cloak rack remains broken, just as you remember it, but now it supports drying herbs that hang in tight bundles. Someone has painted a mural of birds and clouds over the corner kitchenette. A string of tiny clockwork toys, Belle's handicraft, hangs over the window. A single boot rests in a position of honor on a shelf, a prize that 11-year-old Latchboy stole from a member of the City Watch. You find memories in every corner of the room, some of which you were involved in the making of. The arrival of 2 more friends interrupts your reverie. They enter from the hallway to the private quarters. Rufio lights up when he sees you, radiating the light of his celestial heritage with a warmth that matches his smile. From behind him, Belle makes a wordless cry of joy. The gnome rushes to hug you, and you feel the strength in her arms and the crush of the ring mail she wears beneath her cloak. You embrace Rufio in turn, and then the 4 of you draw back a set of mismatched chairs to sit at the table, eager to catch up on old times. You learn that your friends all stayed together after you left to find adventure, struggling to make a living here in the Trades Ward. Times are tough now, and the rest of the gang is out doing odd jobs. Night work on the dock pays better than labor on this side of the city. Most of the gang's jobs are legitimate now, since everyone is old enough to turn an honest trade. However, they keep all their old contacts, one of which facilitated a job the gang is preparing to do this very night. You notice that each of your friends is wearing a dark traveling cloak, as though preparing to go out. "We got your reply, so we thought you'd arrived hours ago," Rufio says. "The coach never arrived, and we just given up on making it tonight." You explain how the coach broke down and how you walked all afternoon alongside some unhelpful companions. Although tired, you tell them you're happy to help with whatever caper they've planned. Your friends grin at one another. "Now that you've gone off and become a real adventurer," Latchboy says, "we were hoping you'd lend us some of that expertise." "This is the job," Rufio begins. "There's a new faction in the city. Academics of some sort. They're called the Seekers. No one knows what they're about, but they've been buying up historic curios. They're paying cold gold for some very wild things. Over the last year, the Seekers financed some of the city's strangest scavenger hunts. Everyone's joining in, and the competition's getting nasty.
We thought about getting involved early on, but some people got hurt. It wasn't worth the risk until now.
Summer got her arm broken by the Peritons just for asking questions, Latchboy interrupts. You remember the gang called the Crimson Peritons, a small but nasty group bent on expanding their turf out of the docks ward. They clashed with the Slipstone gang more than once, but nothing really came of it. You also remember Summer, a local tiefling musician and adventurer. Many members of the district like Summer, and she helped the Slipstone gang several times. Rufio assures you that Summer is all right before he continues.
She doesn't participate in the scavenger hunts anymore. No real harm done.
From his chair, Latchboy mimes the pain of a broken arm as though disagreeing with Rufio's assessment.
The latest request from the Seekers is the seal of House Deepwinter, for which they are offering 12 harbor moons. The Deepwinter family is part of the city's history from centuries back. They ran a guild of jewelers, although they died out in the war fought among the guilds. They still have an entire mausoleum named for them in the City of the Dead. Since the Seekers put out the last call 10 days, people have been trying to break into that vault to see if the seal is with the House Primarch. The City Watch got wind of it and posted guards around the cemetery district, particularly around Deepwinter Vault. To date, no one's gotten in, let alone found the seal, and the deadline for the reward is tomorrow.
You wonder how Rufio plans to get into the Deepwinter Primarch's tomb if it's so well guarded. Other groups will surely try tonight, with the deadline looming, some of which may include professional thieves or adventurers. Anticipating your concern, Rufio explains the gang's inside track.
Do you remember that Ace used to tend a garden in the City of the Dead? Herbs and fungi? Well, she still does. It's off a side corridor in the House of the Homeless, down in those smelly old catacombs where no one visits. They moved all the bodies from that level centuries ago. They transferred it all into the Endless Crypt. Everyone knows about the mausoleum's demi-planar expansion, but you might not know that the authorities didn't fully seal the lower catacombs after clearing them out. It takes a long rope to get down there, so Ace's garden never gets disturbed. When the hubbub about the Deepwinter came up, Ace casually mentioned that one of the iron doors down there has the Deepwinter symbol on it. Her description tipped us to the existence of a century-old Deepwinter tomb in those catacombs. I've never been to this garden myself, but Ace left us a map of how to get there. Rufio pulls a square of parchment from his pocket and pushes it across the table to you. This must be the instructions from Ace. You give him a skeptical look as you pick up the parchment. You don't think the presence of the Deepwinter family's crest alone means much. That's not all. Rufio feigns a look of offense. We've done our research. 2 small spent days in the clerk's hall, looking through administrative records from centuries back. There's more than we've found out, but that's the important part. The Deepwinters made tombs in the old catacombs before they were influential enough to secure a separate family mausoleum above ground. By the time the guild wars were concluding, the Deepwinters' opposition seized the mausoleum, meaning the last Deepwinters to fall now lie buried in the tombs that everyone's forgotten. Ace's garden in the catacombs has been right next to it this whole time. There's an incredibly good chance that Parnak Deepwinter, the last Primarch, is there, and with him, the family seal. So, we go into the City of the Dead, but don't break into Deepwinter Vault. Instead, we'll head for the House of the Homeless. No one will be watching that.
Despite Rufio's infectious confidence, you can't help but feel trepidation about the plan. You unfold Ace's instructions. The small square of parchment contains a simple map, which you take a few moments to memorize before putting in your pocket.
I'm sorry we have to rush out like this, Rufio says. This isn't a proper welcome for your return, but time is against us. No Nap and Too Small aren't back from their night jobs yet. We'll have to have a welcome breakfast when we're all back here safe.
With that, Rufio, Bell, and Latchboy get up and begin to gather the last of their equipment for a nighttime adventure. Since you haven't had any time to unpack, you stay seated at the table, already prepared to go. As you wait, a stack of papers catches your eye. The top sheet is thin enough that you can read the large print inked into the other side. It reads, Notice, Eviction and Forfeiture. You flip over the page and find some legal lingo about overdue rents and a judgment from the common court naming your friend Rufio, No Nap, and Too Small. The gang owes a large sum immediately, and the paper warns that forfeiture agents will arrive any day to receive the gold, to seize things of value in lieu of payment, or to evict the residents. The gang's financial troubles are more dire than you guessed. Concerned for your friends, you feel justified prying a little deeper. When the others are all out of the room, you flip through the stack of papers until you find something else of interest. One of the papers is a receipt written in calligraphic script. It's for a diamond valued at 500 gold pieces, a spell component for the local Zor Star temple to raise Rufio Rudra from the dead. The date is 1 year ago. You surmise that Rufio died last year, and the gang had to borrow money to pay for his return. No wonder they're desperately working all the time. The 12 harbor moons the Seekers are offering together worth 600 pieces of gold would help to fend off the creditors, for a while at least. "Ready," Latchboy says, approaching the door while fitting his arm through a long coil of rope, hanging it across his torso. "Me too," adds Rufio. Belle shoulders her own rope, then signs to show readiness. The four of you walk into the warm night. In that moment, standing beside your old friends and preparing to go on an adventure, you feel right at home, like you never left Waterdeep. All right, and so we finally get ready after that long prologue into Chapter 1. All right, I'm actually pretty pumped about this. Chapter 1, To the City of the Dead. The night air is warm as you leave the hideout ahead of your friends. You step onto a landing overlooking the alley adjoining Slipstone Street. The neighborhood seems deserted, but you still hear noisome crowds on the high road just a block south of you. The city is alive with distant revelry. Your companions each recheck their equipment, and Rufio produces a heavy key to lock the hideout's door. "I may leave some of my equipment in the hideout for safekeeping if I wish. To do so, simply note which items of my character sheet I leave behind, and I can recover those anytime I return to the hideout. I don't really have very much on Monterey, so I'm actually going to take everything here. Actually, hold on. I'm actually going to go ahead and leave my hunting trap. Probably going to leave the extra traveler's clothes. I'll keep the explorer's pack and the backpack. I'll get rid of the bedroll, the mess kit, keep the tinder box for my torches. I'll even take some rations just in case, because you never know when you're going to get hungry, especially when you're a stout halfling. We're definitely going to take the hempen rope and the water skin. Also leave the staff. I have no need for a staff. And I might as well keep the javelin, the hand axe. Definitely going to keep the great axe. And a trophy from an animal I've killed. That's going to be probably like some sort of a necklace or some little doohickey that's always attached to me. So I think I'm going to keep that as well. So we're getting rid of quite a few number of things. We're actually going to take a moment here to refresh our memory about this Slipstone gang member. I actually have two separate sheets here that go into, one is for the actual game itself, and then I have the appendices on a separate page. So the Slipstone gang, the members of this small alley gang grew up hard on the streets of Waterdeep. Their activities are mostly non-criminal, although some of their jobs have crossed that line in the past. Most of their income derives from legitimate protection operations and manual labor. We have Rufio, the leader of the Slipstone gang. Rufio was born with celestial ancestry. He feels called to a higher purpose and spends time studying in the Monastery of the Sun. Rufio is an inspiring leader, keeping the gang away from trouble and operating within his personal code of honor. There's Too Small. This clever halfling has a head for complex calculations and obscure lore. She's the gang's go-to member for appraisal, bargaining, and long-term strategizing. It is Too Small's tiny financial investments that have kept the gang operating and eating during some of the lean years. We have No Nap. No Nap joined the gang a few years ago. After meeting Ace while wandering in the City of the Dead, Rufio makes sure this Agender High Elf has enough access to sources of lore to satisfy their magical curiosity, and No Nap makes sure the gang has all the arcane support it needs. Ace is a healer and herbalist. She loves growing plants, and she tends a secret garden of herbs and fungi beneath the House of the Homeless, beneath the City of the Dead. Ace crafts healing salves and looks after the gang's general health, bandaging wounds and selecting healthy food. Ugh, we don't need no healthy food, we need meat and cheese, lady. There's Latch Boy, who left his old gang after some adventurers in Trollskull Alley killed most of its members. He is deeply loyal to Rufio, who he sees as an exceptional leader. Latchboy has all the skills of thievery, but he would prefer to be an actor and longs to join an entertainer's troupe. We have Belle, who ran away from home at an early age, hoping to find adventure. She never speaks, instead relying upon expressive hand gestures and written notes. Although an able fighter, her gnomish size makes Belle an unlikely candidate for her role as the gang's enforcer. Asker, this raptor, is Rufio's angelic familiar. More potent than a normal Asimar's guide, Asker keeps a weather eye out for danger in the trade ward. Invisible except to the members of the Slipstone gang, it follows and watches over each member of the gang from time to time. We also have Pockets. Pockets is a large, loyal hound. She knows all manner of useful tricks, like wearing a harness of pouches full of tools and supplies. The gang raised Pockets from a pup, and she is a fierce defender of its members. She has fought alongside them reliably in several past scuffles. And then we have Thuds. Thud's name comes from her showy high steps, something she learned during her time in the circus. She never resorts to the pedestrian gait of other horses. The Slipstone gang uses Thuds for odd jobs around the trades ward, usually for pulling the gang's wobbly wheeled delivery wagon. So that's all of the members of the Slipstone gang. We are also going to read about Ace's instructions. We have a map of Ace's instructions. So we have an entryway that leads into a wet shoulders, which leads up into a cliff going up. To the west, southwest of that, we get wet feet and a question mark. And to the northeast, we get a box that says growing. And further down to the southwest, we get death mold and do not enter. Go around question mark. Definitely, probably don't want to go to death mold. I mean, it sounds very deathy. Some time between the growing and death mold is another path that goes up north to the storage hall, and there's an X with black door on it. So that's a little map of the Ace's instructions. So I'm assuming that we want to go east and up to the black door. If X marks the spot, at least, if that's what that indicates. Instead of descending the wooden staircase to street level, Belle grabs a dangling rope that lies hidden in the shadow of a drain pipe. Each of your companions climbs the knotted rope in turn, and you follow them up 3 stories to the tiled rooftops. A surprisingly strong wind here blows warm off the sea. From your vantage, you look out over Waterdeep. Rows of street lamps wind like rivers through the dark across the city, and you can see crowds moving slowly in the light of public squares. To the west, not half a mile away, you see the rise of Castle Waterdeep's spires. The castle stands on a hill overlooking the city. Long banners add color to the structure's outer walls, lit by magical lights. Your group picks its way north along the steeply angled rooftops, climbing and jumping carefully where the roofs vary in height. You pass quietly by the Sword Star Temple, rising several stories above the other buildings in the block, and continue north to Nethpranter's Street. A single block remains between you and the walls that surround the City of the Dead. You are preparing to descend to ground level when Rufio grabs your arm. "Look there," he says, pointing to an alley across the street. You look, seeing 6 figures skulking in the darkened courtyard of a guild hall. They are out of sight from passerby on the street, but you make them out clearly from your vantage. "Perytons," whispers Latchboy. "We should go teach them not to look so ugly while loitering in our territory." You are surprised to hear that Crimson Perytons are operating so closely to Slipstone Street. Your gang's rival seems to have grown bolder since you left Waterdeep. Rufio shakes his head at the suggestion. "That's not what we're about tonight. Or ever, really. Let's just implement our plan." The 4 of you back away from the edge of the roof, and Rufio fills you in on what's to come. "We're going in teams." Rufio turns to you. "You've got experience, so you're leading one of the teams." You remember, with some discomfort, how your friends overestimate your adventuring experience. Hey, look at this. We get some renown. So, I'm going to have to keep track of all of this. So for the Slipstone gang, I got 3 renown. You wouldn't call yourself an experienced adventurer. Seeking your fortune away from the city hasn't really worked out for you, but somehow this doesn't seem like the right time to admit as much to your friends. Then again, we have been the silent protagonists for this long.
Choose Latchboy or Bell to come with you, based on the approach you'd like to take into the City of the Dead.
Rufio continues.
Latchboy's plan is just walking in the front gate. We got 2 official grave tender disguises from one of our contacts.
Rufio pulls some heavy robes from his backpack.
If you feel like you can talk your way in, take Latchboy and try to pass yourself off as grave tenders employed by the Carver family.
The guards might be on alert for this sort of trickery. They know the Seekers put a bounty on something in the Deep Winter Vault, but the watch is fewer in number since so many must patrol tonight celebrations in other parts of the city. For this route, I'd have to leave behind any large armaments. They'd immediately notice metal armor. Then again, I am naked, so could do that. Rufio lets that sink in a moment before describing the other approach.
The second plan has you leaving the city with Bell. You can go out the river gate and into the Undercliff region east of Waterdeep. From there, you will approach from the east, sneaking to the base of the bluff below the city walls. The district walls have watchtowers, and the guards are usually vigilant to watch that direction, so don't light any fires or make loud noises. There's a pipe that empties out the cliffside. It's an outlet for excess rainwater, collected in the cemetery district. You and Bell will climb the cliff to that drain pipe, wade into it, then climb the chute that channels rainwater into the drain pipe from above. That will take you right up to the City of the Dead, near the House of the Homeless, with plenty of cover to finish your approach. You have less chances of being discovered this way, but it might take longer. And remember, we need to be out of the district before sunrise. If both teams make it through, we'll meet inside the mausoleum, but neither team should wait more than 30 minutes for the other to arrive. One last thing,
Rufio says, making eye contact with Latchboy.
Be careful not to kill anyone in the City of the Dead.
Something seems to pass between Rufio and Latchboy here.
Nobody needs to get hurt for this, and a dead body would bring down too much heat, particularly if it's a member of the Watch. Now, I've been saying this protective scroll for the moment just like this. Hold still and I'll use it on the 3 of you.
Latchboy and Bell don't look happy about this. They seem concerned about the expense of wasting a magic scroll, but Rufio pays them no heed. He unrolls the parchment and reads off the words of power. Alright, we got an aid spell. So my maximum hit points increased by 5 for 8 hours. I also gain 5 current hit points. You think carefully for a few minutes before deciding which route to take. Accompanying Latchboy means doing a lot of fast talking. Going with Bell means crawling through tunnels and doing a lot of climbing.
Well, I do like a lot of climbing. And I don't mind getting dirty. I mean, I haven't bathed in like 2 months or something like that, and I can't even remember the last time I actually took a bath. So Bell, you're coming with me. And make sure you keep your eyes on the cliff and, not on my naked body, because I'm a barbarian,
Belle just kind of like shakes her head in disgust. So we're gonna take the underground route. We choose to accompany Belle, approaching the cemetery from outside the city walls. With that decided, Rufio and Latchboy don the grave tender disguises, preparing to talk their way into the City of the Dead. You help your friends check their disguises, then make your farewells. If all goes perfectly, you'll all meet up at the House of the Homeless. Failing that, at least one team has a chance to make it to the tomb and find the Deep Winter Seal. You follow Bell south, then east along the rooftops, picking your way carefully over mossy old tiles, until you come to the intersection of Nethpranter's Street and Quill Alley. Bell points out a convenient rope ladder, part of a fire escape route. This descent will take you to the street level, at a point just beyond sight of the Crimson Peritons lurking across the street to the north. The ladder doesn't reach all the way to the ground, but someone's placed a convenient crate a short drop below it. With a firm hand sign, your gnomish companion tells you she can make the drop without trouble. She proceeds down the rope ladder as you watch out over the alley. Then, as she is reaching the last rung, you start your own descent. You have only gone a few rungs when you hear the impact of Belle's soft boots as she lands on the crate below. Unexpectedly, the sound of shattering glass accompanies the impact. By the time you get low enough and drop onto the crate, Belle has inspected the source of the sound. She shows you a series of hand signs, many too rapid for you to interpret, but you recognize the sign for trap.
Blast it. You know I can't read that sign language stuff. Can't you just like talk for once, or get a parchment and a quill and just actually write it down? Although, I'm not even sure if I can read.
A glance at the conveniently placed crate shows a glass bottle under each corner, placed to shatter loudly if anyone drops onto the crate from the ladder above. You are certain this trap is the handiwork of the Crimson Puritans lurking nearby, and that they heard the sound. You and Belle flee south along the deserted alley. You immediately hear sounds of pursuit. As you pass through a narrow portion of the alley, you check over your shoulder. A short distance behind Belle, who is pumping her short legs as fast as she can, 4 Crimson Puritans are in hot pursuit. The red dye in their hair confirms their identity, and the short blades in their hands make their intentions clear. The Crimson Puritans are growing closer. At this distance, you can hear their jeers and threats. Ahead, the cobbled alley offers 2 routes. You could turn left down the wide way toward the Court of the White Bull, where merchants might still be selling wares from the backs of wagons despite the late hour. Alternatively, you can go a bit farther into Daloon Alley, a long straight run sure to be devoid of witnesses.
Well, Belle, looks like we're gonna take the Daloon Alley route. That way there's not gonna be any witnesses for what I'm about to do to these punks.
With Belle close behind, you flee down Daloon Alley. This route runs parallel to the high road, separated by a row of tall houses and shops. You can hear traffic and pedestrians to the west of you. Visitors are still coming into the city through the nearby river gate. As you run, you see a narrow gap between 2 buildings. If it's large enough, the 2 of you might be able to slip through and lose yourself in the bustle of traffic on the other side. You slow as you approach the thin alley. A hopeful glance down its length shows street lamps flickering on the far side, illuminating the slow press of the moving crowds. Safety is there, but the gap looks improbably narrow. By the time your pursuers make it to the gap, you are on the other side helping Belle out of the narrow space. One of their number, a small halfling, seems eager to follow, but the others discourage him from going alone. You pay no heed to the curses of your pursuers as you leave them behind and hurry down the high road. Now free of pursuit, you head south toward the river road, then east to the river gate, all the way blending with the other travelers on the road. When you make it to River Street, you get the distinct feeling you are going the wrong direction. The traffic is all moving the other way and you find yourself struggling to move against it. You and Belle are among the very few people leaving the city at this time of night. Most are still coming in toward the city center. The morning crowds are going to be even thicker as last-minute visitors come to celebrate the Day of Wonders. As you approach the river gate, a vigilant guard stops an incoming merchant wagon, giving you and Belle room to leave the city through the gap created. Once beyond the city walls, you move east off the road, away from the line of carts, wagons, and pedestrians lined up at the river gate. A narrow footpath leads down a steep hill toward the distant collection of outlying farms in the Undercliff region. Belle leads the way, her short legs carefully navigating the uneven trail. In a few minutes, you've reached the bottom of the hill, away from the walls of the city. There are no sources of light nearby.
Hey, Belle. I ain't got that night vision thing that those other races have. Why don't you light a torch for us? That way we can both see. Also, good job slipping in through that narrow alley. I mean, I know I'm a stout halfling and all, but I knew I could get through that. Although, I kinda gotta admit, you've gained a little bit of weight since I last saw you a year ago, so... yeah, good job.
And Belle just kind of, scoffs and looks offended. Nonetheless, she does light a torch. The trail splits here, going through a wooded area. Directly north, the trail continues through the streets, staying within sight of the cliff atop which the city sits. To the northeast, the trail breaks out of the trees and meanders through tall grass toward another copse of trees.
Belle, should we go north or northeast? I don't like trees very much, even though I grew up in them. I always got bugs and they always like to bite me and they're always itchy. Should we go through the trees along the base of the cliff, or should we go to the northeast and branch off the trail? I know, why don't we flip a coin?
Monterey pulls out a little silver coin.
Alright, so on heads, we go to the north. On tails, Well, we're still probably going to the north, but I might actually consider going to the northeast. Oh, wait, I got that the other way around. On heads, we go to the northeast and avoid the trees. And on tails, we'll probably still go through some trees. Oh, wait, they both have trees, never mind. Alright, heads, we go to the north. Tails, we go to the northeast. Okay.
Monterey flips his coin up into the air and it spins and spins and spins. With the light that Bell is holding, he manages to catch it. And then, of course, he puts it on his palm. And then he looks at it. It's tails.
Alright, looks like we're going northeast.
You follow the path to the northeast. It leads away from the cliff to another stand of trees in the near distance. The warm glow of a campfire filters through the trees. As you draw closer, you see a pair of carnival wagons parked nearby and a row of horses staked out to graze. Eventually, the light of the roaring campfire reveals half a dozen men in motley dress laughing and talking as they eat a late meal. These humans have not yet noticed you.
I don't know. Should we avoid them? Then again, you do have that torch. They're probably gonna notice that. Well, no harm in meeting anybody out now. Might as well go and see what's up with them. Let's go and pay these little humans a visit, shall we?
As you approach, the men at the camp stand and beckon you over to share their fire. You think they might have local news or might provide information about the Undercliff area. If they started their campfire before nightfall, they would have seen the lay of the land and might have information about parts you should avoid. You approach the campfire with Belle close behind. The colorfully dressed men greet you warmly, standing and offering a seat beside the fire. Each man introduces himself with an obvious stage name. One of these troubadours styles himself Fire Tongue, and he wears a white cook's apron over his red quilted doublet. Fire Tongue offers you and Belle bowls of spicy stew from the pot he is churning. Not wanting to waste the opportunity, you ask the men about the lay of the land in the Undercliff area. They tell you that a farmer's field lies directly north of them, beyond which is an irrigation channel that runs along a low wall marking the southern boundary of a farming community. My passive perception is 13, so we'll get this little blurb. Across the campfire behind the friendly troubadours, one of their colorful wagons has an odd discoloration to it. A wet stain mars the wood amid the many hued stripes near the wagon's bottom. Directly beneath the stain, gleaming crimson in the firelight, a shallow puddle catches the occasional drips up from the wagon above. As an adventurer, you immediately suspect the pool to be blood. Worrying that something nefarious is afoot, you stand up and cross the camp under the guise of taking a drink from the wagon's water barrel. From this proximity, the smell of fresh blood is strong. You guess there's at least one corpse hidden in the wagon. When you return to your place at the campfire, you find Belle entertaining the troubadours with a pantomime performance. The minstrels seem engrossed in your mute friend's expressive antics. Belle waves for you to join her in telling the story. Her face is laughing, but her hand signs tell you danger. You nod in agreement and join Belle acting out the tale of the pauper bridegroom. While you play your role, primarily the target of a slapstick routine, you start noticing other details that are out of place. Despite the high quality of these singers' clothes, they seem to ill-fit some of their wearers. Firetongue is fairly bursting from his doublet. You would have noticed this sooner but for the large cook's apron he is wearing. The most disturbing detail, however, is the minstrel's failure to offer a traditional musical accompaniment for the pantomime show.
God damn it, what kind of a frickin' minstrel doesn't even play the lute?
Belle signs occasional messages to you, working them into her performance. She suspects these are bandits who killed the troupe of musicians and are now waylaying travelers who stray from the road. She wants the two of you to flee into the night during the final scene of the pantomime, when she expects these men will be most distracted. Alright, we get to make a charisma check for our performance. So let's go ahead, and I have a 0 in performance. Oh boy, let's go ahead and roll. Alright, we got a 13. Hey, look at that. That's actually really good. Thank you. Now these murderous bandits will not kill us, hopefully. I don't know. We'll definitely see. As the pantomime reaches its final scene, you step up the performance, eliciting uproarious laughter from your audience. Firetongue is overcome with mirth. He rolls off his seat and slaps the ground, tears in his eyes. Without missing a beat, you and Belle break into a run. You hurry past the campfire, through the trees, and into the dark field beyond. Your audience is completely surprised. By the time they realize this is not part of the routine, the two of you have made good your escape. Belle leads you through some high grass, moving off the trail. You keep a careful eye out for pursuit, but are soon satisfied that the troubadours are not following you.
Oh, geez, Louise, Belle. Of all the chances that a troubadour would actually be on this road, and of course that troubadour troop actually were bandits that had killed the troubadours themselves. Just our luck. Did this night get any worse?
You move north through the tall grass. To the west, you can barely make out the cliff upon which stands the city of Waterdeep. At this distance, no one on the walls will notice you. As you approach it, the oddly flat terrain ahead of you reveals itself to be a farmer's field. You see the silhouette of a figure reclining against a gnarled tree on a tiny hill overlooking the field. Although the farmer might be sleeping, a large dog sits beside its master, clearly awake and alert.
All right. Belle, I have to admit, I really don't have a thing for dogs. It's either actually kind of bigger than me, so... I mean, haven't you ever had any dreams of being eaten by a dog? I mean, you're just as short as I am. Although I'm pretty muscular, so I have more meat on me than you do. Although, I guess you have more fat than I do, so technically you'd be tastier, right?
And Belle just looks like she's about to slap Monterey for his comment. So we can continue north, hoping to avoid the farmer, or we could approach. I think we're going to avoid the farmer, or at least try to avoid the farmer, because Monterey doesn't have a thing for dogs. You make a wide detour around the hillock to the west, hoping to pass without rousing the sleeping farmer. Let's make a stealth check, and we are rolling at disadvantage because we do have a light sword. All right, we rolled a 14 as our disadvantage. Our higher roll was 17, so let's see, we just barely passed that. Cool. You move along the west side of the hillock, leading Belle through the quietest part of the tall grass and avoiding anything that might make a loud noise if stepped on. The city west of you, on its high bluff, blocks the coastal wind from carrying your scent toward the dog's sensitive nose. Soon you are out of the sight of the farmer. As you continue north, the trail you are following joins a wide track coming from the field east of you. Ahead, the gentle burble of moving water warns you that you are approaching one of the conduits that carries the city's runoff water. You soon come within sight of the channel. Its straight, eastward flow forms the southern boundary of a farming community. The amount of water is low, owing to the seasonal dryness characteristic of early Marpanoth. The dirt track you are following will cross this channel at a low bridge next to a gatehouse. You see a torch in the gatehouse window, indicating that a guard is within, ready to challenge anyone crossing into this small district. You decide to cut west, leaving the dirt track to avoid the gatehouse and its guard. Your destination is at the head of this channel, where rainwater empties from the city. It should be easy to find. The city wall looms high above you in the west, atop the bluff. As you walk, you find the remnants of several crude shacks. Scraps of timber and old canvas, most blackened by fire, lie scattered about. These pieces appear to have once been crude shelters. Moving past these scraps, you follow the sound of splashing water until you reach a swampy pool. The ground is muddy. From a pipe high overhead, a steady stream of water falls into the pool, which in turn drains into an irrigation channel, which draws it eastward toward Undercliff's crop fields. The farmers in Undercliff also use this pool to water their small stock of cattle. You find a single cow drinking from this pool, its hooves sunk deeply in the mud. More cows stand a way off, their bulky shapes just visible in the distant darkness. The drain pipe in the cliff above hardly looks large enough to crawl into, but that may just be a trick of perspective. The climb will be 100 feet up the sheer cliff. The large rope Belle carries coiled across her torso will be just long enough to reach the ground, if tied to the pipe above. One of you will have to climb the cliff to reach the drain pipe, then lower the rope for the other to follow. We are, of course, going to climb the cliff, because we are a barbarian, and we are very athletic. Belle hands the long rope to you and helps you sling it across your own torso. She takes a minute to examine the cliff face with you. The moonlight reveals a surprising degree of detail, and the two of you discuss the best course to the top. There are 3 routes you can choose from. The first is a direct climb up to the pipe. The second and third are to either side of the falling water, where the cliff is surely to be dry, followed by a horizontal climb to the pipe. The left-hand route may be the easiest. Bell points out a series of holes in the cliff that may serve as handholds once you are high enough. Although its distance is shortest, the central route is likely to be the hardest because of its proximity to the falling stream of water. The entire stretch is likely to be wet and slick with moss. The right-hand route looks much like the left option, only smoother with no obvious holes to aid you near the top. You will have to go farther to find climbable areas of the cliff in that direction. As you contemplate these choices, you hear one of the cows lowing nearby in the dark, making that deep sound characteristic to annoyed cattle. In response, you see some movement of light to the north of you. You see a lit torch in the distance and the shapes of approaching people. You have only a few minutes to get into the pipe before the local farmers find you and Belle.
All right, Belle. Get ready. I'm gonna go right in through the center. I'm gonna show you how climbing is really done. At least how we did it out back in the woodlands. I mean, I climb trees for a living. Or at least to get rid of those pesky owlbears. So, don't mind me, and if I fall, you better catch me. Alright?
You climb the shortest route, directly up toward the drain pipe. The cliff face is slippery, wet from droplets spraying from the stream of falling water and covered in slick moss. You gotta make a strength athletics check. Roll with disadvantage because it's slippery, of course. We got a 12 from our disadvantage. 15. Oh, we did not quite make it. You lose your grip and fall into darkness, unable to catch yourself or arrest your descent. Down and down and down we go. To be continued.